Zilara had always been a curious soul, a rare trait among the beings of her kind. Her race, known for their intelligence and grace, often kept to themselves, focused on their missions with discipline and precision. But today, something was different. Something in the human facility drew her attention, something she couldn't resist. She had been working with the humans for months, learning their ways and studying their advanced technologies. As part of her mission, she had been assigned to assist in their research, but she had never expected to find something like this. The facility was unlike any place she had ever been before. It was filled with strange devices, jars of substances she couldn't understand, and shelves filled with vials of liquid. There was a certain energy in the air, a mix of both excitement and secrecy. Zilara had spent many hours observing the humans, trying to figure out how their systems worked, how their minds functioned. Yet, in all her time here, she had never come across something quite like this. She wandered deeper into the lab, her eyes scanning the rows of vials and machines. Her fingers brushed against a glowing bottle, its contents swirling with a strange hue. There was no label on the vial, nothing to indicate what it was. It stood on a shelf by itself as if waiting for someone to find it. Her heart raced with excitement. The vials she had seen before were always labeled, each one marked with a clear warning. But this one was different. This one was mysterious. Zilara didn't think twice. She reached for the vial and brought it closer to her face. The serum inside was thick and shimmering, the color a mix of vibrant reds and silvers, like molten metal in liquid form. The light from the lab flickered, casting strange shadows on the walls as if the room itself was watching her. She knew she should be cautious. The humans had warned her many times about the dangers of their chemicals. But in that moment, curiosity got the better of her. She had never seen a serum like this before, and her mind began to race. What if it could enhance her abilities? What if it could make her stronger, more capable? Zilara, always the cautious one, reasoned with herself. Just a sip, she whispered to herself. Just a sip, and I'll know what it is. She uncorked the bottle and poured a small amount into her mouth. The liquid was cold, thick, and tasted bitter, unlike anything she had ever experienced. She hesitated for a moment, unsure if she had made a mistake, but the urge to know more overwhelmed her. She swallowed. The moment the liquid hit her bloodstream, a wave of warmth flooded her body. It started in her throat and spread quickly, moving down to her chest and into her limbs. Her muscles began to tense, and her heart rate spiked. She gasped, her body trembling, as a strange energy pulsed through her veins. At first it felt like a rush, like an incredible burst of power surging within her, filling her with strength and vitality. Her vision blurred for a moment, and her hands shook uncontrollably. The world around her seemed to shift, as if the walls of the lab were closing in on her. Zilara's breath quickened. She tried to stand tall, but the sensation was too overwhelming. Her body felt like it was going through some kind of transformation. She could feel the serum coursing through her, reacting with her alien biology in ways she couldn't understand. She had heard of human combat serums, substances designed to enhance the physical capabilities of their soldiers, but she had no idea how dangerous they could be when consumed by someone not of their kind. Calm down, she told herself, her voice shaky as she placed her hands on the lab table to steady herself. She tried to focus, but the rush of power within her was too much. Her senses were overloaded, her mind spinning, and she could feel the strength in her limbs intensifying. Her skin tingled with heat, and her muscles swelled with unnatural force. But it was not a feeling of exhilaration. It was a feeling of fear. She stumbled backward, knocking over a nearby lab stool. The sound echoed in the silence of the lab, and she froze. The power inside her was uncontrollable. Her body was no longer her own. The alien girl who had always prided herself on her precision, her control, was now at the mercy of a human serum. Panic began to rise in her chest. She could hear her breathing growing louder, her heart pounding against her ribs. The world around her seemed to distort, the lights above flickering in time with her racing heartbeat. Her hands shook as she tried to push herself upright. But it was no use. The energy inside her had taken over, and she felt as if she were about to lose herself completely. She had made a mistake, A grave mistake. The serum had been designed for humans, and yet she had consumed it, thinking she could handle its effects. Now she wasn't so sure. Zylara's legs gave out from under her and she collapsed to the floor, her body convulsing as the serum's effects continued to take hold. She could feel her body growing stronger, but at the same time, it was becoming more and more alien to her. She had never felt so out of control. She had never felt so vulnerable. Her mind raced as she tried to piece together what had happened. She had taken a sip, and now the serum was changing her in ways she couldn't comprehend. Was this permanent? Would she be able to undo the damage? Her mind spun with questions, but all she could focus on was the overwhelming sensation of power mixed with fear. As the effects of the serum continued to intensify, Zylara realized she had no choice but to find a way to reverse what she had done before it was too late. The lab felt like it was closing in on her, the walls pressing in, and she could feel her body growing more and more unstable. She had made a mistake. A dangerous, irreversible mistake. And now she had to face the consequences. Zylara lay on the cold floor of the lab, her body trembling uncontrollably. The once calm and confident alien now found herself fighting an overwhelming force, an inner storm that threatened to break her. She could feel it. This strange, foreign power, the human combat serum coursing through her veins, overtaking her in ways she had never anticipated. Her muscles burned with an unnatural strength, but it wasn't the exhilaration of power. It was pure chaos. Every inch of her body screamed with the desire to release the energy that was building up inside her. But her mind screamed louder for control. She had to fight it. She had to stay calm. But it felt like trying to control an unstoppable wave that had already begun to crash against her. Her heart pounded in her chest and the pounding echoed in her ears, louder and louder, until it drowned out everything else. It was almost as if the serum was trying to take over every aspect of her being, urging her to surrender to it. Zylara tried to push herself up, her hands trembling as they pressed against the cold floor, but she couldn't stand. It was as though her body was refusing to obey her commands, her muscles tensing and spasming in protest. Her breath came in shallow gasps as she struggled to regain control of her limbs. The power, the strength she had felt earlier now felt like a curse, a force that was dragging her into the depths of something she couldn't comprehend. She could feel her vision blurring and a headache that throbbed with intensity. In a moment of desperation, Zylara reached out to the walls for support, her fingers scraping against the smooth metal surface. She needed something to ground herself, to regain some sense of reality. But the room was spinning, and every movement she made sent another wave of dizziness crashing over her. She felt as though the serum had unlocked something deep inside her, something primal and uncontrollable. It was as if she were two beings in one, her alien self, the one she had always known, and something else, something darker, more violent, that was starting to take over. Zylara's mind raced. She had to find a way out of this. She couldn't let this serum control her. She was stronger than this, more disciplined than this. She had faced danger before, but nothing like this. This wasn't an enemy she could fight head-on. It was a battle within herself, a war between the power of the serum and her own will. The more she tried to focus, the worse it became. Her breathing became erratic, and she could feel her body trembling with each passing second. She gritted, her teeth trying to push through it, but the energy inside her surged again, making her pulse quicken. The sensation was maddening. Her body was no longer responding to her mind, and the feeling of helplessness grew with every moment. In a sudden, frantic move, Zylara threw herself into a nearby chair, her hands gripping the armrests so tightly, her knuckles turned white. The room was spinning faster now, and she could see the lights flickering above her. It was as if the very air around her was vibrating with an unknown energy, the power of the serum radiating off her like a storm waiting to break. She had to control it. She had to regain her focus. But the more she tried to push it down, the harder it became to control. It was as if the serum was fighting back, resisting her every attempt to regain dominance. Zylara could feel her muscles growing tighter, her body filling with energy that had no outlet. She felt like she was on the edge, teetering between holding on and losing everything. Her breathing became shallow and sweat beaded on her forehead. She could feel the power building inside her again, but this time something was different. The anger, the rage she had never felt before surged within her, mixing with the power the serum had granted. It was a feeling she had never known, raw, uncontained, and terrifying. "No!" Zylara shouted, her voice echoing in the empty lab. "I will not lose control." But the words felt hollow. The serum had taken root, and now it was pushing her to the edge of her sanity. Suddenly a loud crash echoed through the lab. Zylara jumped, her head snapping to the side. For a moment she thought she had imagined it. But then the noise came. Again, a loud metallic sound like something heavy had fallen or broken. Her vision blurred even more, and her hands shook uncontrollably as she clutched the chair. The panic surged again, threatening to overwhelm her. The sound wasn't imaginary. The doors to the lab had been breached. Someone was coming. Zylara tried to stand, but her legs betrayed her. She stumbled, her body twisting as though the serum had stripped her of all coordination. She fell to her knees, her hands desperately trying to catch herself. The world around her spun faster, the lights flickering like a dying star. Her heartbeat was the only thing she could hear, growing louder with each passing second. She had to fight. She had to find a way to control the power, to regain herself before it was too late. Zylara knew that if she let the serum take full control, there would be no turning back. She had faced many dangers before, but this was different. This was a fight she couldn't win with strength alone. With everything she had left, Zylara closed, her eyes and focused. The panic, the rage, the chaos, all of it was swirling inside her. But she could not let it take over. She had to breathe, to center herself. In the deepest part of her mind, she found a small sliver of control. It was fragile, like a thread hanging by a single strand, but it was enough. Slowly, she began to focus on that thread. She drew in a shaky breath, forcing herself to calm down. The power, still raging within her, began to slow. Just a little. Zylara knew this was only the beginning. The battle wasn't over yet, but for the first time since she had taken the serum, she felt like she had a chance to win. Zylara's chest heaved as the surge of energy inside her began to settle, but the damage was done. The serum had taken control, and now it seemed there was no going back. The power that had once felt like a potential source of strength now felt like a ticking time bomb inside her body. Every muscle, every fiber screamed for release, and the sensation was overwhelming. But Zylara knew she couldn't allow it to consume her entirely. She couldn't let this unknown force take her down, not when she had come so far. The doors to the lab had been breached. Footsteps echoed through the metal halls as armed soldiers rushed in. Zylara could hear their voices faintly, but the sound was distorted, like everything around her was shrouded in a thick fog. Her vision was sharp, but it wasn't in focus. It was like her mind was being pulled in two directions, one part fighting, to regain control, the other part succumbing to the destructive energy building within her. She had no choice. The only option now was to escape. With a growl of frustration, Zylara pushed herself off the floor, her knees buckling beneath her as her legs wobbled with the newfound power coursing through her. Her hands shot out to brace herself against the table, her fingers digging into the metal as if she could somehow tether herself to reality. The room felt like it was closing in on her, the walls pressing tighter, the air suffocating her. She could barely think straight, her head pounding with every heartbeat. Yet in that moment there was no time to lose. The soldiers were getting closer. She could hear their voices growing louder, their footsteps more distinct. They were closing in, and they wouldn't hesitate to stop her, especially not now that she was in this uncontrollable state. Zylara's body tensed. Her mind screamed at her to stay calm, but the serum was already taking over. Every time she tried to focus, the power inside her flared, pushing her to act. She had to escape, or this would be the end. The last thing she needed was to be restrained, to be treated like a dangerous threat, because that was exactly what she had become. She heard the hiss of the door as it slid open, and the harsh light of the hallway spilled into the lab. Without thinking, Zylara sprinted forward, her feet barely touching the floor as she shot out of the lab and into the corridor beyond. The soldiers hadn't even seen her yet. They were still in the lab, likely preparing to call in reinforcements. Unaware of the storm that was about to hit, Zylara turned a corner, her pulse racing as the serum's effects intensified. Every step felt like a battle. She could feel her legs moving faster than she could control, her body becoming a blur as she tore through the facility. She had no plan, no direction, just the need to escape, to break free before the soldiers could corner her. A sharp metallic sound rang out as Zylara crashed through a security gate. The impact sent vibrations through her body, the sheer force of it making her stumble for a second. But she didn't stop. She couldn't. The power inside her surged again, this time with even more ferocity. As if the serum was aware that she was trying to escape, it pushed her forward, faster, more recklessly than she had ever been. "Stop!" a voice shouted from behind. "She's out of control." Zylara didn't hear the command fully, but the panic in the soldier's voice was enough to fuel her urgency. The realization hit her like a slap in the face. They would come for her and they would stop her. She couldn't afford to be caught. Her body, now stronger and faster than ever, moved almost on its own, tearing through the complex like a force of nature. As she neared the exit, Zylara saw the light of the outside world ahead. The doors to the building stood open, but there were more soldiers positioned just outside. It was a trap. They were waiting for her. But Zylara had no time to think. She couldn't stop now. Her body was moving on its own, like a vessel filled with uncontrollable power. The serum had awakened something deep inside her, and she had no idea how to suppress it. Without thinking, Zylara threw herself at the nearest guard, her body slamming into his with the force of a charging beast. The soldier was thrown backward, his weapon skidding across the floor. She didn't even pause to check if he was okay. She didn't have time. With one fluid motion, she sprinted past him, heading toward the open doors. But the soldiers were closing in from all sides now. The sirens blared, and Zylara could hear their footsteps behind her, growing louder with every passing second. She was outnumbered. But in that moment she was invincible, or at least that's how it felt. The facility's alarms blared in her ears as Zylara reached the main entrance. The doors were just ahead, but her body felt like it was on fire. The energy surging within her was more intense than ever, like a wave that couldn't be contained. She could hear the soldiers shouting orders, but they were distant, fading in comparison to the power she now wielded. The doors slammed open, and for a moment, Zylara froze. The cool night air hit her skin, and she could feel the wind whip through her hair. The outside world felt vast and foreign, but it was freedom. It was the only escape she had. But she wasn't free yet. Zylara knew she had to run faster, she had to lose them. The serum, powerful as it was, had left her with no more control. It had turned her into something she no longer recognized, but she couldn't let it destroy her. She couldn't let it take everything from her. With a surge of energy, she pushed herself forward, running into the night, leaving the soldiers and the chaos behind. But the fight wasn't over yet. The power inside her was still out of control, and she could feel it, threatening to consume her with every step. As she disappeared into the darkness, the soldiers stood at the entrance, watching her go. They had no idea who or what they were dealing with. But Zylara knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning of her battle, and she wasn't going to stop until she had regained control of the power inside her. Zylara ran, her heart pounding in her chest, her body moving on instinct, fueled by a surge of power she couldn't fully comprehend. The night air was cool against her skin, but inside she felt like a wildfire, burning with energy she could neither contain nor control. She was no longer the calm, collected being she once was. The serum had transformed her into something raw and dangerous. As she sprinted through the streets, the echoes of the soldiers' pursuit faded into the background. They were still coming, but Zylara couldn't focus on them. She had to focus on herself. She had to find a way to stop the chaos inside her before it destroyed everything. The serum had given her strength beyond her wildest imagination, but it had also left her vulnerable. It had cracked open something deep inside her, something primal and uncontrollable. Every time she tried to regain control, the power surged again, pushing her further into a state of panic. The more she fought, the more it felt like she was losing herself. Zylara collapsed against a wall, gasping for air, her body shaking from exhaustion and the overwhelming force of the serum. She tried to focus, but her mind was a blur, the world around her spinning. She could hear the distant sound of sirens, but they felt distant, as if they were part of a dream she couldn't wake up from. Her hands trembled as she pressed them against the cold stone of the building. She needed to calm down. She needed to think. But the power inside her, raw and unrelenting, was clouding her thoughts, drowning her in fear and confusion. Zylara closed her eyes, trying to center herself. She had to find a way to regain control, to turn the power against itself. She had always prided herself on her strength, on her ability to stay calm and composed in the face of danger. But this was different. The serum had altered her in ways she couldn't explain. It had unlocked a force within her that was both terrifying and intoxicating. The air around her seemed to vibrate with energy, the world still and silent except for the rapid beat of her heart. Zylara took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling with the effort. She had to focus. She had to regain control, or she would lose herself completely. Slowly, she reached out to the power inside her, not with force, but with acceptance. She could feel it, pulsing beneath the surface like a storm waiting to break. She stopped fighting it. She stopped resisting. Instead, she focused on it, embraced it, and let it flow through her. At first, it felt strange, like a part of her was slipping away, but then slowly, the chaos began to settle. The power, once overwhelming and uncontrollable, began to calm, like the tide pulling back after a violent storm. Her breath slowed, and the shaking in her hands began to subside. The burning heat in her muscles began to fade, replaced by a steady, manageable warmth. Zylara opened her eyes. The world around her seemed clearer now, less distorted by fear and confusion. The storm inside her had settled, but it had not disappeared. It was still there, a part of her, but now it was something she could control. For the first time since the serum had taken effect, Zylara felt whole. The power had not consumed her. She had found a way to tame it, to make it a part of her rather than something that controlled her. She had learned that strength was not just about physical power. It was about the ability to harness it, to understand it, and to use it wisely. Zylara straightened up, feeling the steady pulse of energy within her, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she smiled. It wasn't a smile of victory, but one of understanding. She had come to terms with what had happened to her. The serum had pushed her to her limits, but it had also shown her something invaluable. It had shown her her true strength. Not the strength of raw power, but the strength of control. She took another deep breath, feeling the calmness settle within her. The soldiers were still out there, still searching for her, but Zylara was no longer the same alien girl who had stumbled into the lab. She was something more. She had faced the chaos and she had conquered it. Now she had to use her newfound strength to find her way forward. With a final glance around, Zylara began to move again, this time with purpose. She wasn't running in fear anymore. She was moving forward, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The serum had not broken. It had forged her into something stronger, and now she was ready for whatever came next. Zylara moved through the streets with newfound confidence, her steps more measured, her mind clear. She had been through the storm, and now she was ready to walk through the calm. She knew she couldn't undo what had happened. She couldn't change the fact that the serum had nearly destroyed her, but she had found something even more powerful than the serum's raw energy. She had found the strength to control it, to use it to her advantage. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time she was no longer afraid of it. She had faced the chaos and she had emerged stronger, and that strength would carry her through whatever came next. As she disappeared into the night, Zylara knew that her journey was far from over. The power inside her was still there, but now, it was a part of her, and she would never again let it control her.